One of the quips you'll hear quite frequently when talking about the black pill or the so-called incel community, and you all know what I think about the term community in the context of the internet, but nonetheless, one of the quips that you'll hear from a lot of people, not just the detractors and the people who tend to cast aspersions at quote-unquote incels or people, or more specifically males at the margins of society, is this catchphrase, and there are many such catchphrases, but we're talking about this one today. Have no expectations, but do it anyway. Do all sorts of things, but have no expectations as to a result or achieving anything, or take your pick. And I want to talk about this today because it seems to suffer from the same problem as many of the other forms of sage advice do, namely this idea of do as I say, not as I do. Now, technically, do as I say, not as I do is correct. If a chain smoker told you, don't smoke because smoking is terrible for you, he's a chain smoker. It's also a form of sort of genetic fallacy. Just because a chain smoker says don't smoke doesn't mean that it's wrong. He's right. You probably should not be smoking. But do as I say, not as I do. I want to toss the idea into the arena here that most of these people who are saying this don't have a whole lot of empathy or feeling or even a bare minimum of understanding for the situation of the people in question, which is to say, they have not walked even a foot, let alone a mile, in the shoes of the others. And this really goes to the heart of human psychology. Very few people, maybe nobody, I might argue nobody, although there are probably some freaks out there, very few people do things with zero expectations, zero hopes that anything will bear fruit. Very few people just do stuff and mindlessly plod on without the slightest inkling of hope or the idea that maybe, just maybe, this will bear fruit. Maybe, just maybe, I will get something out of this. And yet, it seems to me that frequently when people are given this advice, have no expectations, but do it anyway. Self-improve, be a better person, do X, Y, Z, do the whole shebang. But whilst you're doing it, have no expectations. Don't hope, don't expect that it will lead anywhere. But why are you doing it in the first place if that's the case? Why would you bother with any sort of self-improvement or any kind of improvement in your life if you don't expect that it has some kind of positive benefit down the line? Now, some people might argue I'm strawmanning this position. Maybe what people mean is don't have too great of expectations when it comes to the time and energy you invest in something. But that's rarely what people say, and they rarely define what they say. Now, it's completely fair not to have hyperbolic expectations. But the problem in today's day and age, I think, is that we live in, quite frankly, hyperbolic times. It's a very much all or nothing mentality that's out there. And this comes largely from the culture. Social media is a huge influence, and the social media has a massive impact on this. Because to the winners go the spoils, and the spoils seem legion, don't they? The spoils seem infinite. If you're a popular, attractive, wealthy guy, then women galore, money obviously, and all the pleasant things and the accoutrements that you can buy with that money. And on the other end of the spectrum, the isolated incel, right? He gets nothing. Of course, that's not a real representation of reality, but it certainly seems that way. And so when we talk about expectations, I think it's okay to say temper your expectations. And that's the thing that people used to say back in my day. Back in my day, people would say temper your expectations. They wouldn't say have no expectations. Don't expect anything. Which again is a form of hyperbole, obviously. And nobody who's preaching that, nobody who's saying that, would take that statement seriously when applied to them. That's the biggest issue. Nobody who says that to somebody else would themselves have zero expectations in their endeavors. In fact, if I assume a normal psychological profile for people, then if the efforts people put into things ultimately failed, again and again, they would lose hope. They would give up too. So, when we talk about tempered expectations, we're talking about, well, realistic expectations. What can one reasonably expect? What can one reasonably hope for, given a set of parameters, a set of circumstances? For example, how good looking is this person? How smart is this person? How much time are they willing to invest in X activity, whatever it might be, self-improvement, take your pick, doesn't matter. And given these variables, what is reasonable for such a person to expect down the line? I think that would be a far better approach to things if we were to resurrect the phrase, temper your expectations. Because it's not reasonable to demand of people that they have no expectations and no hopes. Because of course they want to attain something. Of course they want to get somewhere, eventually. And the sooner the better, typically. At the end of the day, I'm a bit advocate of realism. Now, some people would say it's not realism, it's pessimism. Okay. But I'm not saying that things are fundamentally unachievable. It's not a pessimism born of nothing can work, nothing will be achieved, depending on the context, obviously. But it's important, I think, always to take inventory of your own skill set, your own circumstances, your genes, who you are as a person, and then try to make your peace with that and try to do what you can with those limited options. And options are, by definition, always going to be limited, even if they seem to be many. That's very different from being a complete pessimist. And so if somebody who's, say, a 5, who's only slightly above average in intelligence, says, I want it all, well, then I would say that's probably unrealistic. You need to temper your expectations. Would I say that he can get nothing? Well, no, because depending on the path he takes and depending on how he decides to go about it, he might be able to get something, and he even might be able to be reasonably content down the line. Maybe he can run a small business. Maybe he can find a wife who's also a 5 or something like that, given the right context. In the United States, of course, that's quite difficult, but maybe he geomaxes. Maybe he goes someplace else. Who knows? I think so many of the issues we face these days, due to social media, cultural influences, boil down to this all or nothing mentality. You either have it all, imagine the Kardashians or some other fabulously wealthy group of people, whatever, it doesn't have to be them, or you have absolutely nothing. And the notion of striving for something in between that might make you content is absurd. For example, I currently live, and have done for several years, in a studio apartment, and I don't like it very much. And so my dream, what I'm striving for long term, is to move in a place that is twice as big. Now, would that be a big place by most people's definitions? No, it wouldn't. But it would hopefully be twice as big as the current place, and have more space, and it would be more comfortable, and hopefully be in a better area, etc., etc. That's what I would say are tempered expectations. It's possible I might never make it out, and it's also possible I can't find anything better than where I'm currently dwelling. So that's entirely possible. But I think it's not completely unreasonable to think, well, maybe I can get out of this studio rat hole that I currently live in, and maybe I can get someplace else. Notice I'm not saying, well, I want to live in a mansion, or I want to live in a gigantic house with 3 floors in it, and have 5 cars or whatever. In fact, I don't even want a car. So tempered expectations, things that a person can reasonably strive for without completely dashing their hopes, all coupled by a healthy dose of realism. I think when engaging with people who are disadvantaged and engaging with people who are marginalized and struggling in life, I think that's the line people ideally should be taking. Because one, that shows that you have a certain sensitivity and awareness of their circumstances. You yourself are taking inventory of the variables that affect them. And so you're not dismissing them out of hand, which usually takes place when A, you say nothing, don't care, call them a loser, whatever, Or B, you say something like, have no expectations, but do it anyway. Just do stuff. Self-improve, but don't hope for anything. Right? If you look at their individual circumstances, then yeah, you're showing interest in them. And that might help them out too. So in summary, I think we live in times of great hyperbole. But I think the antidote to all this hyperbole, whether it's the most extreme form of the black pill or the most blithely indifferent form of the blue pill, or just complete ignorance on such matters, it's not always the case. The middle ground isn't always correct, but somewhere in the middle. Tempered expectations about what one could achieve and what one could have in life. And finally, nobody should be told to have no expectations and to hope for nothing. It defies every aspect of human psychology, and we simply don't work that way. Nobody can work indefinitely expecting nothing, hoping for nothing. Maybe if the person's a slave, but in that case, the slave probably hopes, at least secretly, for his freedom. So it just doesn't work. So people need to stop doing that, and people need to stop saying that. Anyway, as always, thank you for tuning in. Please leave a like, share, comment, subscribe. All that YouTube jazz, much appreciated. And if I'm still alive, I'll check you out later. Take care. May the gods watch over you. Bye-bye. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.